In the book, a lot of the finer points of tuning are spelled out pretty clearly, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of my preferences and my philosophies on tuning. Tuning is a skill that you develop over time through a lot of experimentation, reading, getting together with some of your friends, seeing what their drums sound like and learning from them. It's just going to come through experience, and it's going to take some time to develop this. There are literally thousands of different types of drum heads available, and they all have a different particular sound, slightly different. On these drums, I'm using coated Emperor heads on the tops and clear Ambassadors on the bottoms because I'm trying to go for a punchy, kind of in the middle pitch-wise sound. My personal preference is to tune the bottom head a little bit higher than the top. It could be anywhere from a half step higher to a minor or major third or even a fourth higher. Just for example, I'll go around the toms and hit beneath and then hit the batter head as well. These drums are tuned a little lower than I normally tune, but as I said, we're trying to go for a nice punchy sound that's going to fit a lot of situations. Just experiment with your drums and the heads that you have on them. In general, you want to have at least heads that are in good shape without any dents or holes. And you want to experiment with what's going to sound good and what's going to sound good to your ear with the drums that you have. For snare sound, my personal preference, again, is to tune the bottom head higher than the top. I tune the bottom maybe as high as it'll really go without snapping or cracking or splitting. And then the top head I tune to taste. On the metal drum, I usually tune this a little higher so I can get a nice cracking backbeat. You're going to see me change out to the wood drum. And when I play the wood drum, I keep it a little bit looser. That gives me some ease when I'm playing the buzz rolls, and it gives me a little bit more of a slushy sound when I need it. For me, I like to tighten the snare wires not too much. So even though the bottom head is pretty tight, the snares are pretty medium, and then the head is to taste. So again, on the metal drum a little high, on the wood drum a little looser. But in general, my snare wires are not over choked. And if you do that, you can really choke the drum up and make it sound very dry and very dead. You may notice sometimes when you're going around the toms, you might hear some sympathetic snare buzz. This is going to happen a lot. You could spend your entire life trying to get rid of it, but it's going to happen a little bit. It's just part of the way that the drums sound. You can try to minimize it by having some good snares and making sure that the bottom head is in good shape, the snares are in good shape. You don't want to tape the snares to the bottom of the head because then they won't throw off, and it'll also just muffle the drum and it won't sound very good. So you're going to have a little bit of that, but you want to try and minimize it as much as you can with tuning. Sometimes just going around the drum and just changing it just a little bit, bringing it up or down just a little, will maybe help that sympathetic snare buzz. Be careful not to over muffle. You don't want to make your drums sound like cardboard boxes. For me, the muffling here is just to control some of the erroneous, undesirable overtones and just to focus the drums and give them a nice punchy sound. But I still want the drums to resonate and to have a nice full sound and not be too over muffled. With these drums in this room, I've decided to muffle things a little bit. I use gaff tape so that I can just set it and forget it. When I turn the drums upside down, or if I'm going to move them in their cases, it's not like anything's going to fall off of them. The tape sticks there, and it's there when I pull the drums back out of the cases. For the bass drum, nowadays they make a lot of pre-muffled heads that work really well. I like to have the resonant head a little bit higher than the batter head. And this is just something you're going to have to experiment with. For this situation, we've cut a hole in the front of the head so we can put a little bit of extra dampening up against the front head. Again, just to control the erroneous overtones. I like the drum to be nice and full and not overly muffled. Also, you want to be aware of the intervals of the drums. I don't necessarily tune to a specific pitch, but I do try to tune to general intervals. Basically, you just want to make sure that the drums sound like they belong together and they sound like a little family. In general, you just want to have some space between the drums pitch-wise. You don't want to pitch them all the same or too similar, and you don't want to pitch them too differently either. You want to make sure that your floor tom is not lower than your bass drum, and you just want to make sure that they all sound like a nice little family and they sound like they belong together. A nice little interval to hear is that interval that you sometimes hear at the racetrack. These are just some very beginning ideas just to get you started. We could write books on tuning and you could spend hours talking and learning about it. In general, you just want to make sure that all of your lugs are in tune with each other on each drum, that the heads on the bottom are in tune, and that you have a nice relationship, whether you decide to go like I do and go a little bit higher on the bottom than you do on the top, or if you want to go lower, that's okay too. Experiment with what you like. You can go into your local drum shop, bring in a drum, and have them show you and maybe walk through tuning. And make sure you watch and pay attention and learn. And you can buy some new heads and really change the sound of your drums and make them sound much better.